My name is John McLaughlin. I'm the chairperson for the Commission on Disabilities. I'd like everybody else to introduce themselves.
Can we call the meeting first?
Okay. We have quorum, so we're going to call the meeting to order. At what time is it?
I have 7:35.
7:35.
Excuse me, but I'm hearing impaired, and I can't.
Okay. My name is John McLaughlin. I'm the chairperson
I finally got that.
for the Commission on Disabilities.
Thank you.
All right? And meeting is in order. Elaine, Jason.
Elaine Shimbari, I'm the secretary for the Commission on Disabilities.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ann Murphy on the Commission on Disabilities.
Megan Summer, I'm the vice chair for the commission.
Nina Brodsky, the treasurer.
Now, I hope everybody had a chance to read the meeting, the minutes, and any alterations to be done.
These are the minutes that we have to approve from the last meeting.
Do you have a motion to accept?
I don't know how many people have read them.
The minutes?
I read them. I read them in your email.
Any corrections, additions?
I would like to do an addition on the new business that we spoke of last month. I had brought up electing a new slate.
Pardon?
I had mentioned, I had moved to put on the agenda for this month, a new slate, since it's June or July, that we start looking into a new slate for the Disabilities Commission. And I remember that we had talked about that, yes, in October, we had elected a new slate, but I looked through my notes too, and you were right, it was October, but that was when you all voted on a treasurer so that we could deal with town hall and accessing the commission's monies for different projects. And so that isn't here, that we were going to put that in new business.
I didn't realize that we were going to put that on here. I left it off specifically because we said we were going to wait until we got new members added because people were coming onto the board this summer. And that's why we delayed last year, because we waited for you and for Michelle to be on board before we voted for the offices.
Maybe just make a note about that.
I will add it to,
discussion.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any others?
I think also just note on there that John Dennehy had stated that like typically boards do re-elect or elect members, usually June or July, just that's typically when that's done.
He did also say that it could be later in the year.
Yeah, because of the election.
I don't remember that. And
I have it on tape.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Is there a motion to accept the minutes with the amended comment?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with the amended comment.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, since we have some guest speakers, usually we go off the agenda for courtesy for the guest speakers to be heard. I'd like to introduce Steve Higgins from Independent Living and William Shine. You can come up here and
There we go. Do you need us to use the lav mic? Is that better for you?
No, it's just there.
Okay, fantastic. I always ask as reasonable accommodation because I know sometimes if there's an assisted listening device or something that somebody might need in a room. utilizing pieces of equipment like that make all the difference in the world as to whether somebody can hear or can't hear, which is a good thing. I'm Steve Higgins. I'm the Executive Director at Independence Associates. And we're one of 11 independent living centers in Massachusetts. And each of the 11 independent living centers covers a geographical portion of the state. Scituate happens to be in our service area. So our office is located in East Bridgewater, but we provide services basically from Brockton over to Plymouth, back to Taunton, and all of the surrounding 31 communities in that catchment area for traditional independent living services. And for another piece that we provide, which are the personal care attendant services, we actually provide services all the way from just south of Boston down to the tip of the Cape and the islands. So we do have staff that go up to the islands a couple times a year. And what an independent living center is, so folks understand, is it's not a place that has beds or anything like that. In fact, we're born from the grassroots civil rights movement of persons with disabilities wanting to be able to live independently in our own homes. Our organization has been around for about 37 years. And, you know, it's interesting for a 37-year-old organization that we continually reintroduce ourselves to the community, because many times, like a lot of other smaller not-for-profit organizations, we don't have these big budgets for advertising. Although, if you came in person tonight, we had some highly coveted things like Frisbees from our youth program that we passed out to folks that are here tonight. And so what an independent living center is, and the myth a lot of people think is that as an independent living center that we do things for you. And one of the things that we like to clarify right off the bat is, as an independent living center, is we want to teach people how to be self-advocates. So we will do things with you, but we don't necessarily do things for you. And that can be a challenge a lot of times, because a lot of folks, you know, nowadays it's like, you know, get me housing, get me this or that. It's like, well, unfortunately, we can't do that without you actively participating in the process. And then add to the fact that being a person with a disability and trying to find affordable, available, and accessible housing, the AAA that we call it, in any community, anywhere in Massachusetts, it is literally easier sometimes to find a needle in a haystack. And so we look at all the different challenges that, you know, regardless of age, we serve any person. We serve folks, we say, from 2 hours old to 200 years old. We've never had anybody that's 200 years old. We're looking for that one down the road. But we can provide services to any person with a disability. It doesn't matter what your disability is. It doesn't matter what your age is. It also doesn't matter what your income is, and that's very important. Now, although many programs that are out there that we might point somebody towards as resources are income-based, what we do is we work with a person to teach that person how to guide through this broken and complex medical system so that you have the right insurances to be able to live in your home. We help folks with guiding through the whole issue of how do I find housing and what do I need to do. We actually conduct housing workshops twice a month. And we know not everybody can get to East Bridgewater, so what we do is we do a toll-free conference call twice a month. If there's any person with a disability or any organization that's looking to help someone find housing, it's an informational call that guides people through all of the cracks to get the right things in place that you would need to find housing throughout the community. And then we have 5 core services that every independent living center must provide, and that is information and referral. Information and referral is the most important thing that we do as an organization. And basically, many times, the reality of it is all of us as persons with disabilities, and I identify as a person with a disability, all of us as persons with disabilities face this complex system out there. And many times it's just knowing what the right place is to go to get the information that you need. There's a thing in our state called No Wrong Door. And it's a partnership called ADRCs, which are Aging and Disability Resource Consortiums. The ADRC that serves this area is made up of Independence Associates, Old Colony Elder Services, and South Shore Elder Services. And we work together as a team because sometimes people enter this complex system through a door that might not be the appropriate one to provide services. But what we do is we cross-refer back and forth, and we cross-train our staff so that regardless of the phone number that a person with a disability calls, they're going to end up in the right organization to provide those services that they're looking for. We're a little unique in that one of the things that an independent living center does, which is very core, and as I said when we started, is grassroots advocacy. So as an independent living center, we employ a community advocate. He's sitting right next to me. His name is Bill Shine.
That's me.
And a lot of what Bill does is he deals with the issues of access in all of the surrounding towns. So say somebody is building something in a town and they want to request a variance to make something inaccessible. The way the state law reads in Massachusetts is a copy of that variance needs to go to the local independent living center, which is us, and it has to go to the Architectural Access Board in Boston. And the reason it comes to the local independent living center is it gives the independent living center and the disability community an opportunity to review the request to see if the community feels it's appropriate. So we take it really serious, and every single variance that comes into our office, Bill actually sits down and reviews them, and we determine whether or not it's a variance that we feel would be appropriate or whether or not it's a variance that we disagree with. And in either case, we respond to the Architectural Access Board. So when the Architectural Access Board is meeting to make a decision, then they are able to take that information in. We also do systems advocacy from a proactive standpoint, and especially when you're talking about removing architectural barriers in the community, we would much rather have a builder, a developer, or town, or somebody else pick up the phone and call us before they're going to build something and have us look at the plans, or have us come look at an existing building and say what can be done to make this building accessible. And we'll work with them and help them to make the facility accessible. And then if there is a variance that's needed, we can guide them through the process of applying for the variance appropriately. Many times people hear from us when they're applying for a variance and they almost think it's a punitive thing, when we would much rather take a proactive approach and work with someone before something's built, so that we're talking about a fully built community in which all of us, regardless of our disability, needs of mobility devices, or whatever, can participate fully. So that's one of the key things that we do is access. The core services are information referral, skills training, where we have resource coordinators that will sit down with any person, regardless of their disability, to teach basic activities of daily living skills. And we have peer mentoring, which many of the people on our staff are folks that have disabilities themselves, or family members with disabilities. And we can kind of relate. We may not have the exact same disability as you, but we can relate as peers with disabilities that face many of the same barriers in society today. And we work to guide people through that. And then, of course, I spoke about advocacy. We do systems advocacy, which is the architectural part of it, but we also do individual advocacy. So if a person with a disability is running into an issue with Social Security, or running into an issue with Mass Health, those are two of the biggest ones that we hear on a regular basis, or into an issue that you live in public housing and you've requested that, you know, a piece of adaptive equipment be installed in the building that you live in, say a power door opener or something like that, but you're concerned with going to the housing authority yourself. We've had that many times. We can be the advocates that individually go to the housing authority, go with you to Social Security, and do all these things. One of our staff is actually a Shine counselor. And so she has a full understanding of this fractured and complex system we call Medicaid and Medicare and all the poop that goes with it. That's a technical term. And she works on that, every day. Another thing that we do, we were really excited when this happened. 2 years ago, President Obama created the Administration for Community Living in Washington. And under the Administration for Community Living, they merged a lot of organizations like ours and others that work to support persons with disabilities to live in the community. And that was a really powerful thing when that was done. And one of the things that was done when that administration was formed is there was a 5th core service that was added to Centers for Independent Living, which we had been doing for years anyway, and it's called Transition. But it was added in a little bit different way that's exciting. We're now required to do 2 types of transition. The first one is nursing home transition. And that is if a person is in a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility and they're looking to get back to the community, we assist that person through all the hoops and bounds and ladders to be able to get back to the community. That can take a significant amount of time. The reality of it is sometimes it can take a year or more by the time we look at putting housing, personal care attendants, medical transportation, all of these things that are required so that we can live independently in our homes. And then there was a type of transition that they were noticing was being overlooked, and that is when a young person turns 22 years old, they fall off this cliff, and all of a sudden they had access to supports and services while they were in school, but now they turn 22 years old and everything goes away. And so we started transition to adulthood. And so we started this program less than a year ago, and I'm happy to report right now we have 80 young people in this area and the surrounding towns that are working with our transition program to have the opportunity to make the choices like all their non-disabled brothers and sisters that go to high school with them or to college with them, is to being able to go to college, being able to get a job in line with their education, being able to find housing in the community when they, as a young person with a disability, decide that, like everyone else, they want to have an apartment, and of course they want to have a party a week after they get there, but that's okay. Didn't we all? When we think about that. And so it's exciting that we look at both ends of the spectrum. The majority of the folks that we provide services to at Independent Associates fall between that age of 22 and 60, because that's the age where it's the hardest time to find supports and services. Once you turn 60, you can get services through the elders and aging system, and once you turn 22, you fall off the cliff. And so we provide services to about 1,500 people in the 31 cities and towns that we serve. And about 75% of those folks fall between that age range of 22 and 60. And it's just basically finding the services, finding the supports, and the pieces to the puzzle that allow us all to live independent in our homes. So we provide the 5 core services. We provide advocacy. We're available to any person. We have folks on our staff that are called options counselors. And the exciting thing about options counselors is this is a program that was started in Massachusetts as a pilot program 7 years ago or 8 years ago. And it's actually gone national now. And originally we provided services only to a person with a disability. What options counselors do is it doesn't matter if you're a person with a disability, if you're a neighbor, if you're a disability commission, if you're a town councilor, if you're just somebody that's trying to get information to help someone out, an options counselor can sit down and meet with you to kind of give you an idea of the options that are available that will help you to live independently. The other thing that options counselors can do is if a person is newly injured and they end up in a hospital or a rehab, that options counselor can go out and meet with that person right away to start talking about the supports and services that that person needs to live at home. Well, maybe you know somebody that that now is going to need a ramp on their house, but you didn't know how to get a ramp. the options counselor can guide you onto who you would talk to about getting a ramp put on a house. They might point you to Bill, because Bill's going to be able to tell you, well, here's the grade, here's the steep, I can teach you how to design it or build it so that it'll be accessible so that you can get in the door. They might put you in touch with Habitat for Humanity, who does a great job building ramps, and they love to do stuff like that. So there's lots of resources out there, and basically what an independent living center is it's a resource center. We work primarily finding resources so that folks with disabilities can live independently in their home as they choose. Now, we don't provide safety net services, and that's what sets us apart.
Can I just ask you something?
Sure.
Are you a private organization that charges, or are you a public organization that does these services? So I'll let you answer.
So we're a private, not-for-profit organization, and the services that we provide to an individual with a disability are provided free of charge. They're funded through several sources of state and federal funding.
Okay.
The state funding comes through the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission and other sources within the state, but they're a large source of the funding that we receive. And then there's federal funds under Title VII of the Rehabilitation Act, which come to every state in the country, and they're a significant source of the funds that we provide, that we receive for providing services.
So the clients don't have to put out any money for this?
No,
Okay.
no.
That was-
Information, referral, things like that are all free. Personal care attendant, if a person qualifies for those services, are free.
You would help them figure out how to...
Right, and interestingly, even when we do community access, say a builder calls up and wants Bill's advice, we're required by law to do that. So we're not going to charge somebody to do that, because we're already paid by the federal or the state government with the grants that we receive to do that, because we're required by law to make sure that our communities are fully accessible.
That's great, thank you, I just wasn't sure.
And we do accept donations, because we are a 501c3, and I would be remiss to not mention that if anybody supports what we do, certainly you can get a hold of us, and we've had, we've received donations over the years that allow us to do things that, when we receive a donation, we can utilize those monies to do things like maybe pick up a young person that doesn't have access to public transportation to get them to a meeting with a bunch of other young folks with disabilities and their peers to learn together. Or we do an event at the State House in Boston, and to teach folks about individual self-advocacy skills by coming to an event at the State House. Or on July 21st this year, Massachusetts has its annual Americans with Disabilities Act celebration, which is held at Dun Pond State Park in Gardner. So we're able to use donation funds to charter a bus that is first come, first served, so we make sure there's a couple of accessible positions on the bus, and first couple folks that need those accessible positions on the bus, reserve those, and it gives folks the opportunity to get together for a day to celebrate, right around on the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, a little bit of disability pride and have a good time. And we also work in conjunction with the Department of Conservation and Recreation at that event, and they do things like accessible kayaking that day. They bring accessible trail guides and different types of mobility devices that could be used out in the woods, whether it's shadow boxing or trailing or things like that. And it's a showcase of some of the good things in Massachusetts that we do have available. So if you have questions about our organization, we're going to make sure there's plenty of brochures here with folks. Unfortunately, you had to come to the meeting to get the Frisbee, but we'll gladly reach out to us. Our regular phone number is 508-583-2166 or 800-649-5568. And the person that does much of our information and referral is a gal named Patty Gale, and she usually has a good idea of who she should point folks to within the organization, and she's just fantastic at that. She's also really busy. So sometimes in the shuffle of things, if you don't catch her right away, it takes, a few days for her to get back with you. But, we do want to let folks, and of course, anybody that wants to stop by our office can do that at any time that we're open. We're open from 8:45 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then we do, our youth program sometimes has events, like this Friday, they're running an event until 9 o'clock at night. And where the young people are going to teach their parents about disability. It should be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know your office? I see the address. I used to work in that same office.
Same building.
141 South Main Street in Brockton.
That's our old
Used to be
address.
DSS.
Yes, that was our old address.
That's what's here.
Our new address is 100 Laurel Street, East Bridgewater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were in Brockton for many years. And and unfortunately, we are a not-for-profit organization, so when you have 10,000 brochures, you reuse them with a new label on the back and do your best. And we moved to East Bridgewater, more than anything, you can relate. 141 Main Street was not the most accessible place in the world. As a person with a disability, you could get in the front door, somewhat, or you needed to use some sort of public transportation to get there. And there wasn't a lot of parking. And as our organization was growing, we were outgrowing the space we were in. So we wanted to move to a space that was more accessible to the entire community. And at our office where we are now on 100 Laurel Street, we have, 300 parking spaces? We have plenty of accessible parking. We're on the first floor. Folks can come in. We have a community meeting room similar in size to this room, a little bit smaller, that we regularly do trainings at. And, so it's become a location that's more accessible to the entire community. So we just want to thank you for asking us to come tonight. John met myself and one of my other staff, Manel, in a meeting in Duxbury a month or so ago. I know I see at least one other person sitting in the audience tonight that was there also. And, we're around. We'll gladly come in and do presentations, but we're there for the important stuff. We'll gladly work with you to guide you through that complex system that we call being a person with a disability and just wanting the opportunity to live at home like everybody else and, have the same things that our non-disabled brothers and sisters have. So we thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so
Nice.
much.
Do you have anything to add there, Bill?
Well, in my job as community advocate, if anybody calls, and a lot of people are afraid to say that this is wrong, anybody that calls remains anonymous. We take all the heat that anybody's going to give us. So we want to make sure that anybody that calls us, they will not get in trouble.
I sign all the access complaints personally, actually, so interestingly, in a couple of towns, I think that some of the building planners look at me as the arch enemy because they see every access complaint come through with the same guy's name on it. It's because of the fact that many times as a person with a disability, when you're living in a town and you're dealing with issues of access, there's that concern, what if I make a big stink? Or what if the town says, well, we can't believe that, such and such a person said this. So that's why we chose many years ago that if a person would like to keep it anonymous around issues of access, I personally sign those complaints.
And you could.
Wow.
Did we pay the bill?
I think we have to move or somebody didn't pay the electric bill. There you go.
It's not too windy right now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Yes.
It's on what you just said. I'm just curious, Scituate has had a lot of big construction going on.
Yes.
Do they come voluntarily and talk with you, reach out to you, or do they just go to John, or do they just know it all?
So a lot of times places feel they know it all. We'll start with the know-it-all. I don't have a real name for the know-it-alls, but a lot of them are architects. And unfortunately, a lot of architects, especially from outside of Massachusetts firms, will try to build something to what they believe are the regulations, and they don't look at the CMRs, which are the Massachusetts Code of Regulation. And so they'll try to build something to meet the federal standards, but it doesn't meet the Massachusetts standards. And then they'll come after the fact and apply for a variance. And that's why many times, and why we take it so serious to go look at the variances, variance request, because we want to see if the variance would be appropriate, or is it another one of these cases where an architect built something inaccessible. And if that's the case, a lot of times we're going to work with a town to say, hey, your architect firm did a pretty bad job.
And we make them fix it.
And we do make them fix it, as well as we can.
The Architectural Access Board has a lot of power.
Once it's erected, you gotta rip it down.
Right.
And that is costly.
They can possibly do that.
Yeah. But if a variance, you know, there's times when a variance is appropriate.
A lot of times.
And a lot of times, you know, examples would be is if you're rebuilding a building in town, and it's a historical building, and the reality of it is there's not enough room on the left side of the door or the right side of the door without significantly changing the space that would be needed to make that door fully accessible. But the folks that are building the building are willing to make sure that the ramp and the turning platform and everything to get into the door is fully compliant. Well, that would be an appropriate variance, because it allows the historical significance to stay in place, yet everything around it is being taken into account to make sure that a person with disability has full access to it. But a lot of times we do get the variance requests are usually an afterthought. Although more and more builders and developers in Massachusetts are putting in variance requests as a forethought, as they're starting to build out a project, because then if they run into something that they know they need to have a variance for, either us or someone can come in to guide them through the process so that it's going to be the least obstructive way to build it. And that it can be built and made accessible, and that any reasonable accommodation that can be included in the project from the beginning. When it's included in the project from the beginning, then the cost of the project don't escalate, and towns love that, and private builders love that. It's when they find out afterwards that they have to fix something that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars that we hear those negative things about. I can't believe those people with disabilities want that. And, you know, I use one of my favorite examples that we have, you know, when we talk about curb cuts.
Oh, yes.
You've never had issues with curb cuts, have you?
You know exactly.
In town? Okay, so curb cuts. You know, we talk about we want curb cuts to be accessible for persons with disabilities, but the majority of people that use curb cuts and prefer curb cuts are not persons with disabilities. They're moms with strollers that want to be able to move freely through the community. They're young kids that are moving around the community, pulling their wagon, whatever they're doing. But when it comes time to talk about making it accessible, oh, no. We can't believe that. Why would we have to do that? And, you know, one thing I give Massachusetts credit on is exciting. On the state level, we've just developed standards for what every single curb cut should look like. Yes. Now we just have to get, as each town or community is building or has building going on, that we ensure that accessible curb cuts are put in place, and that there's not curb cuts to nowhere.
My husband, who's partially blind at this time, hopefully temporarily, went up to the new library today with another person, and the crosswalk was not painted. Mm-hmm. But that probably is because the blacktop is new, the asphalt.
Probably.
So it eventually will be. But anyhow, he wanted to cross the street and then, you know, go up to the library. And there was some kind of a berm. I didn't see it. I didn't go up. But he said it was, you know, a hump of asphalt. He said, now, somebody with a carriage or a kid with a bike, mm-hmm. He said, you know, they can't do that.
Where is this?
He did call up DPW and complain, but it's after the fact, you know.
Well, Bill will actually look into that.
I will.
And, you know, seriously, and, you know, a lot of times when towns repave, they don't necessarily deal with the sidewalks. And so you have a wonderfully paved road and a beautifully disrepaired sidewalk sitting right next to it. And so a lot of times we advocate to make sure that if a town does repave, if they've made that curb cut go out of compliance, the curb cut still has to be compliant. And so if they've repaved, they have to take into account that the curb cut has to be made compliant also. Now, if the paving is in process, they may actually be taking that into account. And right now, it's paving season, and so there's lots of it going on. But whenever we do hear of issues like that, we do come out, and Bill literally brings a smart level with him and checks the grade and makes sure the slope and the grade of the curb cut and everything are there.
I do.
Yep, and he checks every single one of them. He's walked many miles of streets in Plymouth and Bristol County, measuring curb cuts and things like that. So, yeah, those are the kind of things, like sometimes we don't know a particular street is happening. Bill attends the Old Colony Planning Council meetings, which is a great thing because many of the folks from the local DPWs also attend the Old Colony Planning Council. So a lot of times in the spring, Bill has an idea of when different streets are being paved, when sidewalks are going to be worked on, and sometimes they talk about other major infrastructure, like when traffic lights are going to be installed, things like that. And the nice thing about that is having a person from the Independent Living Center be at the Old Colony Planning Council gives us the opportunity to comment about accessibility. And from that, many times, many of the towns have picked up the phone and called us now when they have something that's happening. Because, you know, regardless, they're going to call us one way or the other. So it might as well be before the fact so we can guide them through the process versus, you know, when somebody calls and complains because something wasn't made accessible. We did notice one thing on the way in that Bill showed me, and he's chuckling over here. You know, when you build a beautiful facility like this, you have little things that get missed sometimes. So we noticed that the signage needs to be updated out here in the parking lot. There's no van accessible marking. And so, you know, whenever we're in a place, we want to talk about, hey, there's a simple thing. That's an $11 sign.
It's still $11.
But it needs to, but it's something, yeah, but it's something when you look at it, you know, it's been exciting. Even the most recent courthouses in our area that have opened, the big one in Taunton, and there's that thing going on that we've been all seeing in the news lately and stuff like that. We were actually called and asked to do a full tour of the facility before it was open to look and make any comments if there was any things that needed to be changed. So our state is taking proactive measures, and those are the kind of things that we're willing to do. We'll gladly do that. But, so those were great questions. I hope we didn't take too much of your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are you going to call over to town hall about that handicap signage?
If you would like
The
to do
van?
this,
I think it comes better from you than from
We can do that.
sometimes.
I will do that.
Yeah, we can do that.
And I will check in front of the library,
Oh,
okay?
thank you.
But I think that in front of the library, they're in the process of repaving. So you're going to get, they
For a
have
few
to
weeks.
grade it.
Yeah.
And in order to do
I
that,
thought it might have something to do with water drainage.
Right,
They don't
but
want it to come.
until they finish.
Fast down. the
until they
hill.
finish, you know, their last coat, it will change a lot.
Yeah.
They do this specifically, okay?
Yeah.
So it may be that, but I will take a look at it.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Well,
All right.
I'm already talking to the building inspector, because I went to the library today, and I
Okay.
saw some things. Regardless, there's no that rubberized mat, any of the curb cuts at the library yet, but the curb cuts are there. There's hash marks right for a van accessibility, but the sign doesn't say van like you're talking about.
Right.
Right.
It has to be
Yeah.
marked,
It has
to be
the
marked.
sign has to be
And
there.
they look at me and say, hey, you know, I said, it has to be a certain height too. You have to break clearance, but,
5 to 8 feet,
yeah.
Yep.
so.
The things that a lot of people think make an accessible parking spot accessible are not what needs to be there. a lot of people think that there needs to be a symbol painted on the ground.
No.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with the symbol painted on the ground and everything to do with the signage. Because New England is the perfect example of symbols on the ground do absolutely nothing in a snowstorm. You know, I mean, let's be real, when you think about it, that's why the requirements are that there has to be a sign at the head of the parking space. That sign has to be a certain height, and the international symbol has to be displayed at a certain height, and there has to be a certain amount of van accessible parking spaces by law. Well, if you put the sign there, but you don't put the van accessible tag, you're not in compliance.
Right.
And so it's as simple as you need to follow all the rules in order to make it fully compliant.
Will you make a report on that?
Yeah, we don't mind.
Is there a permit, you know, like when you build something here in town, you have to put a building permit up, and then you have to get passed on before you open your doors by everybody, electric, you know, the whole plumbing, whatever. Do they have one for disabilities?
No.
No.
Is there something because it's a government thing that you have to get that passed?
Every town is required to have an ADA coordinator. That ADA coordinator may not necessarily be a building inspector, or, you know, it doesn't say in law who that has to be. Many towns, though, do choose to have the building inspector as the ADA coordinator. So if you're building things with public accommodation, like this building or the library or things like that, the building inspector should have a full understanding of the federal and the state accessibility codes and shouldn't be signing off on any plans. Unfortunately, they don't teach that to many building inspectors in college, and even though they are ultimately, by their signature, signing off that the town is accessible, many times it's not. And so, you know, is one of the things that I've encouraged for many years is if your building inspector or folks within the building department in your town have never attended the training that the Mass Office on Disability does on community access, the CAM training, they do it, you know, the Mass Office on Disability is very limited in their funding also. So once or twice a year, they try to do CAM trainings and they move them around the state. And I always encourage building inspectors and new folks working within municipalities to attend a CAM training. It's a 2-day training and it goes from A to Z through the Massachusetts CMRs on accessibility. And it may even still go through things like what are simple things that you can do to see if something's accessible. You know, I used to have my access kit, and one of the things in my access kit that I used to carry is I went down, it was Kmart at that time, now we have to go to Walmart around here, and I got a fishing scale. Why did I get a little fish scale? So I could hook it up to a door and pull and see how many pounds pressure it took to open that door. Because on the top of that door right there, inside of the little box, there's a little screw that you can adjust to make the door so that it sits within the guidelines of a person with a mobility device can open that door and access the room like everyone else. And so, you know, we would teach folks about some of these basic tools and some of the things that you can get out there. There was a thing, and I don't know if it's still online anymore, it was called the ADA Access Stick. It looked like a slide ruler, but if you opened it up, it showed you exactly how wide something needed to be on a doorway for accessibility. It had a little level on it with a block that if you put it down and it came out level, then the grade slope met the pitch, the 12, what is it, 12 to 1? You know, the 12 to 1 pitch. And, you know, and told you whether it was level. Now they have smart levels for that. That's why Bill uses that.
Much easier.
Yeah, and a smart level tells us exactly the grade, so when he snaps a picture and the AAB looks at it, they like, I guess we can't argue with that one. You know, that's the great thing about it. But, so there's ways that municipalities can learn to be accessible. These are tools that are put out there annually. There's new trainings being put out on the federal level on the ADAGs, which are the federal regulations. We're actually working to bring an Access Academy up here to Massachusetts. It's an national ADA access project that I'm part of as a board member of the National Council on Independent Living. And we're hoping to bring a national ADA access training to Massachusetts sometime within the next year or so, that folks can attend, have a full understanding of the national impact and the pieces that we look at. So I know that was a lengthy answer, but hopefully it got to, and that's why these things are so complex. When we look at them, there's so many complexities as to, well, yeah, the town's required to have an ADA access coordinator. What about the ADA access plan? Where is your town's ADA access plan? As a disability commission, do you review the ADA access plan on an annual basis or a regular basis so that you as consumers and as a disability commission could make recommendations to the town council and the folks, because as persons with disabilities and members of the Disability Commission, each of you are change agents.
Yes.
And even though it can be frustrating and sometimes you feel that things aren't changing as fast as you think they should be, without you, they're not going to change at all. And so as change agents, as you work, I teach Advocacy Skills 101, Legislative Skills 101, and I like to talk about things change at the speed of government. And the speed of government is generally almost in reverse, but not quite a lot of times. So we need to understand, how do we work within to get effective change within the change of government? How do we work to make sure that anything built in our community is going to be accessible? Anytime a new road comes in, it's going to be accessible. So we start there, but then we start talking about, well, what about these other roads that folks with disabilities live on, and there's no curb cuts? When the town's looking at its capital budget, how many curb cuts can we build each year in places that don't already have a curb cut? Where can we put in a sidewalk that there's not a contiguous sidewalk so that a person with a disability can get from one side of town to the other? Well, that gets real complex because the town owns some of the streets, the state owns some of the streets, developers own some of the streets, and you can be on the same street and in 1/4 of a mile, the town owns 500 feet, the state owns 500 feet, and oh yeah, a developer is responsible for that driveway. So when you're looking at your town's capital plan and looking at things that are building, as a commission, I always encourage the commissions to ask for the ADA plan.
Excuse me, we're talking about the transition plan. The town had one back in 1995.
Right.
They haven't really done anything with it, and they only covered town buildings. They didn't
Yes.
cover any schools.
Right.
Any other buildings, even include the roads. At our last special town meeting, they were trying to get a committee for a transition plan, which our commission for the past forever with Megan been trying to get a transition plan going.
Absolutely.
Now they're trying to finally get it going, but Elaine and myself are camp trained, and I constantly go with Jeff Dugan and get recertified over and over again.
Absolutely.
All right, and I have a smart level, and I have skills, and I go by a yardstick, mark off 27 inches. Just boom. I have a square that I put on a mark 4 inches, could be said anything, and it's orange and it shows.
Oh yeah.
What are you doing? I said, just making sure this is fine. You can't take things for granted.
No, you gotta measure
Oh,
everything.
absolutely
And then you
not.
take a picture, but sometimes when there's a problem, a picture says 1,000 words, but it also says 10,000 less, because if you take a picture of this piece of paper just here, you don't see there's an edge on this end, and so on. And people who don't have disabilities don't realize that someone in a wheelchair or even a child on a bike, a curb is a cliff to them.
Yes.
And they get hurt pretty bad, they fall off the
That's why
edge.
we do that.
We've been referring to them as cliffs in my family, as long as I remember. My wife uses a mobility device, and, the issue is many of the towns had ADA plans when they were required to put an ADA plan in place. The problem is what many of the towns haven't done is reviewed them.
Yes.
If the town is talking about doing a transition plan, that's a great thing. Make sure as a disability commission that there's a seat at the table for at least one of you,
Yes.
if not all of you. We're going through it. Bill and I are residents of Taunton. And Taunton is doing a new transition plan right now. They're doing a new 25-year plan. And they really did an impressive meeting a week or so ago where they did the technical part of the plan, but then they opened up a meeting to the community and asked folks from the community to come in and say, what do you think? What would you like to see in the community? And it was pretty powerful. So, you know, I would encourage you that as a board and a commission, if your town is starting to talk about doing a new transition plan, that, you know, work with your town council to make sure that at least one or more of you as members of the Disability Commission has the opportunity to sit in the planning process.
Yes.
Because what you will do is you'll raise knowledge, you'll raise things in that level that others might not have thought about, or that might have been left out in a plan in the past. So if your town is talking about doing that, that's a very proactive thing, and it's probably one of the most important things that you as a commission can be involved with, because it will have effect on persons with disabilities for the next 20 years. Now we're all looking at plans that were designed 20 years ago. So the plans that towns are starting to go and build the new transition plans, they're going to have an effect 20 years into the future. Well, some of us might not be here in 20 years, but the implementation of those plans many times does take 20 years. So, you know, as a commission, you would have the effect, a very positive effect, on talking about things in your community like visitability. Nobody's going to bring up the term visitability unless you bring it up. Well, what's visitability? Visitability is a term that's being looked at when we're looking at lived communities, that as a community is being built, is the community fully visitable? Meaning those things about contiguous sidewalks, things like that. Other things to think of, though, is when developers are building houses in towns, is there a requirement in a town that a certain number of the new homes that are being built must be homes that are visitable? Well, what do we mean by that? Those are homes that are being built, that they could be of a ranch design, or a design that they could be made accessible, relatively simple, to any person with a disability, or to, there's this thing that none of us can reverse, although we always keep trying to do it, called aging. So if you're building a visitable community and you have a requirement that some homes in the community are built so that as persons age, they don't have to move out of the community. You can do that by grades coming up to the house. You can do that by building a house that there's only one step to get in, that would be easy to build a ramp onto later should it need to. You could have requirements on bathroom sizes so that if somebody ever had to build a bathroom, or that when they put the studs in the wall, that the studs are already in the wall, that God forbid somebody needs a set of grab bars 20 years down the road. All they have to do is screw the grab bars into the wall. The house has already been built that way. It's visitable. So those are the kinds of impacts that you as a commission can have when you become part of the town plan. You can talk about terms that other people don't understand. And, you know, will we see visitability tomorrow? Probably not.
No.
But if we don't start to talk about it today, we won't see it in 20 years. And that's why it's so important. You know, we're not where we want to be, but I'm very thankful we're not where we used to be. You know, we're going to have the 28th anniversary of the ADA this year. And, you know, 28 years is not very long. And so when we look at the impact, and all of us have benefited from the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it was the most important piece of civil rights legislation for any person with a disability. But it's, when we look at other laws that have been out there, that's a baby. It's only been around for 28 years. So when we look at compliance and we look at this opportunity to make a community better, the things that you guys are doing as a committee are powerful, and I applaud you for that, because many times we sit down and towns don't have active commissions, and you guys have an active commission, and, those are the things that you can talk about. When they're paving the streets, are they putting accessible parking spaces in? Are we marking things accessible, sidewalks, crosswalks, things like that? Just the basics, looking at things like that. Does your town's police department enforce accessible parking?
No, we got like 2 years on our agenda. For the past couple of years, we haven't had a ticket.
Does the town enforce it? Well, if there hasn't been a ticket in 2 years, then that's kind of shocking. And, unfortunately, that's an education thing. But, unfortunately, I had a police officer friend who later became a person with a disability, and he talked about being a police officer. He didn't want to write the $200 ticket for somebody that was parked, blocking a van accessible parking space. And he said, because I could feel for that person too. But at the same time, you're violating someone's civil rights. And so, that's the thing that you have to talk about, that it is an issue of civil rights. And that, frankly, I can't understand why the town wouldn't want the income. Talk about it. As silly as this sounds, the folks on the Framingham Disability Commission years ago, they weren't enforcing the accessible parking in Framingham. So the Disability Commission went to the town of Framingham and they said, I'll tell you what, there's all this revenue that could be generated just if you would enforce it. We'll split it with the town. The town take half and we take half as a disability commission so that we can do really good things around the town. So the town, and they're not a town anymore, they're a city now, but some of the town councilors took them up on it. And so they went out and they started enforcing the accessible parking, and all of a sudden they realized that the board in the town that now had the most flexible spending to be able to do was now the Disability Commission, and then what the Disability Commission did is they trained businesses, they trained people in town. They have an ADA coordinator that used to work for the Access Board, Mark Dempsey.
Yes, I know.
So now they have one of the most powerful building and town commissions in the state, because they take the revenue from the accessible parking and they put it into making the town accessible.
Yes.
So they take that and they utilize that as a resource. So then when the town says we have no money for curb cuts, well, if you would enforce the parking, you'd have plenty of money for curb cuts. And write it into what you're going to use it for, you'd have plenty of money for curb cuts, for doing things like that. And again, it's a training issue, because for many police officers, they don't look at handicap parking as a civil rights issue. And you don't know how many times that my wife and I pull into a spot and then somebody parks on the access aisle and we can't get in and out of our van. We wanted to shop in the plaza just like everybody else, but we can't. The biggest folks that violate some of the accessible parking laws are persons with placards that don't know the law. And sometimes they park on the access aisle and don't understand it. So we also have to make sure that we're educating our own disabled brothers and sisters that have placards on the proper use of accessible parking. Put together a little campaign in your town that talks about this is what the appropriate use is. Talk about the law that the person whose picture is on the placard must be either entering or exiting the vehicle. It doesn't mean they have to be there to both enter and both exit the vehicle, because somebody might be picking that person up. Or they might be dropping that person off, but the law says that the person that's pictured on the placard must be entering or exiting the vehicle. Do a training like that, basic things like that you can do, but also talk about it that it is a violation of civil rights as a person with a disability, that you can't now enjoy the access to the town that every other person can enjoy.
Exactly.
It's the simple, and many times when you frame it that way, a light goes off and folks think about it differently and go, you're right, I didn't think about it that way before.
Well, I'm glad to say that the town a few months ago approached us for open space for recreation. And Elaine and I went out, and Elaine and I educated them on some of the issues that were there. Also, when there were some structural problems, like the doors and so on, I explained them the options how to fix it and get it right.
Fantastic.
Because it's not like, oh, this is the problem, walk away, it's $1,000 fine. No, this is how
Nope.
you can do it, this is how you can not get around it, but make it
Yeah.
work. But it has to go on both sides. For example, the football field. Okay, you have a ramp on the home team side. Well, eventually you need a ramp on the visiting side, because
Absolutely.
people want to go to away games too.
Yep, people want to visit.
And they
And,
look like, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
but it's that awareness that you have to
Yes.
continue raising. And it's that awareness that, I'm excited that you guys have a proactive commission. As I said, many towns don't necessarily have that. And so I know that things that you're doing can be frustrating when you're dealing with access. Certainly if you ever need us to come and talk to someone, we'll gladly do that. Bill is the access, community access guy, will come out and do that. Those are the kind of things that we'll gladly do. But, and then even if it's about the basics, if you're doing an event in your town, say you decide you want to do a disability awareness day, and you want us to come in and talk to folks about stuff, we'll gladly do that. We'll make sure there's plenty of Frisbees from our youth department and, things like that. But we'll talk about the fact that disability is normal. There's an old acronym in the disability community that was out there that I use a lot of times in training called TAB. And TAB stands for temporarily able-bodied, because the reality of it is we're all temporarily able-bodied. I didn't know a year and a half ago that my hand was going to visit a snowblower. If I didn't tell you now, you might not know it, but I didn't know that I was going to lose much of the use of my hand a year and a half ago, because I was temporarily able-bodied in that part as far as it goes. A lot of us don't expect that we're going to have things like MS come into our lives, or things that progress or grow, ALS,
Yes.
things like that. And many times folks with disabilities that are experiencing a progressive disability, all of a sudden all these things that were accessible to them before aren't. And so being able to participate with your family in the same way as everyone else is so important. So when they're doing things, in the town, always talk about that. Always talk about visitability. Always talk about the fact that, look, all we're asking is we'd like to participate just like everybody else in our family. That all of us someday are going to experience disability in our lives. Whether it's us personally or someone in our family, we will all experience disability in our lives. That's normal.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's very, very informative and very helpful.
Excellent.
And we are planning a forum, and we'll definitely be reaching out and to get.
Let us know what we can do. We'll be there.
This fall.
Great.
Nice.
Thank you.
Coming fall, we're going to have an
Thank you.
accessibility awareness day, so we'll definitely have you come.
Nice.
Yeah.
You also mean like a white cane day too, correct?
I don't necessarily do white cane stuff very well because I'm a sighted person, but I know people I can reach out to.
Yeah.
I'm going to
But-
steal some.
So we're going to grab, hey, Bill, can you make sure that, grab another one of those big packets? We'll leave it so that we have them. But thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.
So we hope we didn't need too much time.
Like an hour and a half.
Okay,
All right, I'm just gonna leave a whole bunch, okay?
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
you want to move closer down?
John,
Thank you so
thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming.
Give me a call.
There wasn't any...
Last name again.
What?
Shine.
Do we have anyone else speaking?
Mrs. Arnold was supposed to come, but I'll speak for her. I spoke to Tyler Banks and...
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Should we go, are we allowed a 5-minute recess, or no? Are we allowed a 5-minute break?
Shortcuts.
Take a 5-minute break?
An accessible shortcut.
All in favor? 5-minute break?
You want to take? Do you need a break?
I wasn't ready to be on TV.
Can I make a motion?
What, take a 5-minute break?
Pardon?
We're taking a 5-minute break.
Oh, well, before the 5-minute break, can I make a motion that we just do the items that we want to vote on and then
Oh,
adjourn?
okay.
Yeah, this is going to be,
There's two things to vote on. One was the GATRA funding, and the other was the functional assessment form. I don't think there were anything else that was planned on a vote.
Are there anybody else that's speaking?
Mrs. Arnold was supposed to come, but she couldn't make it, but I'll speak for her. That deals with the GATRA
That's
issue.
what deals with GATRA.
And Tyler Bank, Billings,
Billings.
Didn't come.
didn't come for the handicap. Are we rolling? I'm sorry.
Police
Are
officer.
we rolling?
The safety police
Okay.
officer.
He was coming to talk to us about
I'm gonna get
enforcing
a,
parking.
I know we had something, personal family tragedy
Yeah.
or something, so we didn't make the last meeting, so
And
I'll
then-
follow up.
Better for the next meeting.
And there was
Yeah.
Stephen Moon from the Harbor Master. He was trying to help us get a grant for him for lifts to get in and out of boats on the piers. So, but he's not here either.
So I.
Was he invited to come?
Yes.
Okay, so,
So I'll second that to.
thank you.
Deal with just the
Yeah,
agenda
no-
items that we're voting.
Anybody voting against it?
I would just like to tell you all that we got a date of November 4th for the forum, and it will be at the Scituate Community Center, which is the old Pier 44.
Oh, cool.
So I just want to tell you that because we have to start
Awesome,
planning.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Is that like a community thing that we don't have to pay for the room?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, and in fact, they have the chairs and tables, I just have to.
We're not gonna have
work
to
with
pay for
Lorraine,
anything.
Jennifer.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next we can go over more
All
about the
right,
next
great,
meeting.
great, great.
Thank you.
So did you want to, we're just going to do the two votes, but do you want to take a 5-minute break? Did
No,
somebody-
we'll go forward. In regards to GATRA, there was a problem in regards to getting the system up and running because the semester already started. So the parents committed a different way, so it really didn't work. But what's happening right now is there are after-school programs, or like extended education. And Mrs. Arnold would like to know if we can use that money for the children that go twice a week, and also special needs, for special education for learning disabilities to go to the Jenkins School. So at this time right now, I'm going to see if we can vote to extend that and use some monies for that.
So the motion would be to,
The motion would be to take the same kind of funds that weren't used because it started too late, 'cause it took us months to vote on it. So people already committed to different kind of rides back and forth. But now with the summer school program, as they call it, it starts an hour later than normal. So some parents are already going to school and the children might be able to get it or need a ride. So they would like to have it exposed so the children have a way to and from school for the summer program, for education.
summer program starts June 26th.
June 26th.
And how much do they, is that the same, what did you say, 200, 500?
We had, no, that was something else, 600 we had
600.
set
Oh,
aside.
I guess in-house,
Yeah.
just
And
extend it.
about, that's how much money we put towards it?
Sure, you want to extend it, yes.
Do-
Yeah, I would move
Do you want to
that.
move, can we take it from the other budget, because that's going to be wiped out as of June 30th?
It's, I would so move to to pay for the GATRA transportation for the special needs students to Jenkins, the same way we do the pilot program, and it would come from not the handicap parking fines
Right.
account, it would come from the other account.
Okay.
Fine, sure.
Yes.
That was what I meant.
Anybody
Right.
second that?
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Is it just the 600? Did you want to move?
Well, there's another thing that she wanted too, because we started so late this year, she wants to see if we can earmark all 3 semesters for next year. Do you want to earmark some money from the Plymouth fund there for the same thing? For three semesters? So
I think I would rather wait, I think we should wait to see how it plays out with the summer. Don't.
Well, the summer program incorporates all the schools. The Jenkins School program, we've had a pilot back and forth just for one school doing their after-school program. Remember how it started?
Right, so it'll cost more.
So like $1,800.
Yeah.
So it'll
We have-
cost
we
more
have-
this summer.
If you look at our treasury report,
Oh, right, no, we have.
we have more than enough money.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm just wondering, so should we see how that works if people do use it?
Well, would you rather earmark it now? And then when we get our funds back for in July, we have $5,000 new money that's, not wasted. Right now, we're going to lose what's not spent right
I
now.
don't think we are.
Well,
John?
be-
I don't think
The-
we
the bu-
lose
the
the money
budget-
that we haven't spent.
The budget that if we don't spend it,
We do.
Starts that
But
way.
as of July 1st, any money that's not been used goes to free cash, so.
So you bought them
The
at
only
night.
thing is if you're going to begin to budget for FY '18, starting July 1st, then you really should be using the monies that are coming in FY '18. So in other words, I would use July 1st monies going forward. And next, as the budget process starts in December, January, February, that you're utilizing your amounts for the incoming year. So I know what you're looking to do. Spend the money now for the
Earmark it.
future, but you really should be doing it on an annual fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th.
But if
So
we,
anything you're going to do starting in September for the 4 quarters should really be coming out of the 2018 budget,
So
not the 2017 budget.
but the summer program at Jenkins, which starts June 26th,
I'd use the 2017 budget.
there you go.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
so we're in favor to,
I think we voted for that, 600
Okay,
for the
yeah.
summer, is that gonna be enough?
However much it costs for the summer.
Well, I think we have to set aside a certain amount.
get
don't
set
we?
aside now.
Yes.
We have to set aside a certain amount.
So it's not just one school, it's 4 schools, so.
Well, it's
All the
it's
schools
students
can go from any
Right.
school to the Jenkins
from
School Fund program.
throughout the town.
1,800, like Megan had suggested?
Is that what you said, Meg?
Well, that was for, when we were talking about 3 semesters, 600
Meg-
for the 3
Meg was
semesters.
talking the next
Three.
school year.
Okay.
You can
Now, this
always
is,
overestimate anything you don't use, then we'll
Look back on anyway.
go back into the free cash.
Okay.
That's what we
So,
said, lock it up now.
I
But-
say
Is it a way to follow?
1,800, okay.
out of the 2017 budget, and that way kids can get to school.
Yeah, we just want to
It
make
gives us
sure
a
it
leeway to
happens.
support.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm
And you
sure,
let, John,
I'll
you
let
let...
Miss Arnold know, yes.
Mrs. Arnold know?
and also Joanne Ferraro from GATRA, which will be,
Okay.
okay?
And I'll let Nancy hold it.
We'll have a
Okay.
meeting with GATRA tomorrow. That's GATRA. In regards to trying to get funding, David DiAngelo is the director for Commission Disabilities. There's still another program coming up. And I think the last meeting, I don't want to put you on the spot, John, but Laura Hotbottle went to the meeting for getting a grant for the transition plan. Was that a success, or did it fall to the wayside?
All I know is that the transition plan has been fully funded by the town. If there's a grant that's going to supplement or complement it, then it will be applied towards it. The transitional feasibility study will be funded at full, and you will have it available. So there shouldn't be a worry that you don't have adequate money for it. The question is, if there's a grant that's going to
Help pay it?
offset some of it,
Great.
we'll find out. I think the concern for the commission should be, do we have the funds for it? We do. It's going to happen. And if we can, hopefully, if Laura Harbottle, before she retired, submitted the grant, and hopefully we get it, then it will just offset it. But
Well-
that's from the town, it doesn't come from the Commission on Disabilities budget. It's coming
No.
from the
Yeah.
town.
But also, if she didn't get it this time, July 15th, you can apply for it again, just so you know.
And that's good, that's good news.
At the same time, that I'm going to be applying for grants for getting a lift for, at the marina, to get into the boats, because they have summer programs for children that are disabled also down there. I work with the Recreation Department, so I'm working on that.
John, we were only going to do the voting.
Oh, okay. So, what else is the vote on?
The voting is, the form that
Oh,
Athena and I put together.
Painstaking.
I think I,
Maybe,
oh no, I didn't email that to you.
maybe what we could do, since people haven't seen it, we could table this for next week, next month, to let them look over it.
I sent it out yesterday.
yes.
I don't
Right,
know if
but-
people had a chance to look at it, but,
I don't know that everyone did.
Oh.
well, does anybody have questions relating to it?
Well, there's two issues that came up. One was social service should be involved, because the Board of Health asked me to make sure social service is on board with this,
Social services?
Yes.
This is for what?
to make sure it's worded correctly. That's what the Board of Health asked me. The other part comes down with the form right here. If we added one more box, because we have this access code if there's a problem with the weather, or the storm drains, or dirty water, but the person can hit that option here, so they get alerts like everybody else.
All they have to do is sign up at the town.
But you already have a form right now, they can put it automatic at the same time.
I know, but this is not for the town, this is for the
First responders.
fire department, there's an emergency evacuation.
But the fire department, emergency evacuation, they want to go like other towns where the people enter themselves.
Right, that's what this is supposed to be for, it's online.
Yes. So we have to make sure the IT person has it up, set up too.
IT person has what?
Can access, set the form on the computer so we can.
No, the IT person is gonna develop it and put it online.
And work with
The fire chief.
the fire chief to do this, after it's approved by,
But we have to go to legal.
yeah, after it's approved by the legal people.
I don't know what social services needs to do with it. I just don't understand, I'm sorry.
To make sure if there's anything lacking, they may want them social services on here, be on at the same time.
Social service hasn't been involved with it at all.
I know that, but I was approached and said you should make sure it's okay, so you're not stepping on anybody's toes and you're being courteous.
For what social services in town?
You mean the state,
The
right?
state?
The state?
Okay.
I don't think,
Well, why don't we table it then, so everybody has more
Did you
time
say
to
that-
look at all that?
and
And
Megan
is there any
just
way we
pointed
can
out,
get input from town, post it somewhere so people in the town or anything?
Maybe well,
In case
I
they
wouldn't
have
do
any-
anything until we get legal approval. I don't
Okay.
post anything that's not legal.
Okay.
Sorry,
I
Elena,
did have the trans thing.
also wondering about the whole, like, the ethnicity and the race, like that
Pardon?
section, if that's necessary, where it's.
Well, we're going to check with the fire department and see if that was necessary, because this was originally planned to be part of the Massachusetts state
Yes.
database, which is why I believe they had that race, ethnicity type of thing in there. And if the fire chief doesn't want it, he can just get rid of it.
Elaine and I both talked about that, and we talked about
Yeah.
it, and I didn't like that. And
No, but if the fire chief, if the state wants it, I mean, it's not required that they have to check the box.
I just would, I personally.
But I think it should be up to the fire chief to determine whether he wants to contribute to the Massachusetts database.
Right, or up to legal.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be standing up.
Right, or up to legal, to the lawyer, to legal.
Pardon?
Or up to the legal to see if they need that or want that.
Okay, and the legal department could say no.
Well, two observations. One is, and this is just on the form itself, there's an asterisk with red. I think you need to identify what the asterisk is for. I'm assuming
I couldn't figure out how to put it on it.
I was going to say, it's probably saying this is mandatory.
Be quiet, yes.
So that's number one. As far as the ethnicity, I would suggest, once you finalize the form, then it's going to go through town council. If ethnicity is important, because maybe it could be related to grants in some capacity, then maybe you need it. At this point, I personally would say probably you don't, but I don't want to leave that open for maybe if it's checked out. Usually with certain types of loans or things, or scholarships, they might look at that. I'm not sure whether it's relative to this or not, but I would say finalize it in a final draft form, then town council will take a look at it to confirm it, and then if there's anything that may be suspect or something that maybe the commission should reevaluate and bring it back one final time before a final vote on it. That would be my suggestion.
If you're going to rewrite it, whatever, after the first page, what stands out to me, because I'm a nurse in home care, so I teach my patients who are on pumps, generators, and so on, that they have, if we're having a hurricane, whatever, we start calling them to say, make sure your pumps are plugged in so that if you lose power, until first responders arrive, you have at least a 12-hour battery. On column number 2 that says, I have a battery or generator backup, the wording of this is totally wrong. An IV line would not have anything to do with the generator or battery. If you want to put an IV pump, then change the wording so that people know that urinary catheters, thank God you don't have to plug those
So we don't have to have those, right?
Okay? So we're ready to flow, as we
But
say.
I didn't.
So can we cross that out?
Well, I think the battery
was the urinary catheter.
She said it.
Well, I think the battery generator was specific to the item above it, not that, like it wasn't for urinary catheters, it was for suction, or it was for respirator ventilator.
And so on. So it carried over?
The respirator ventilator, and then I had battery or generator backup for this, which was for the respirator ventilator.
I think we
fit
could
on the
just
bottom of
have
that
it
page.
somewhere, yeah, separate.
The only thing that, I'm just saying, that the only thing that requires a battery or a generator would be a suction machine
Yeah.
a dialysis home machine, and there's not many of those around. God help you if your pacemaker and your defibrillator needs to be plugged in. They're inside you, so if those go, they go. So they,
A respirator, a ventilator?
They don't belong there. Okay, they just don't belong there,
Okay.
you know?
So we should-
Yes, this part here is perfectly, this is fine.
But that,
I understand that, but it doesn't read that way.
Okay,
So depending on how IT puts it in, what I'm saying is those things do not require any type of battery.
right.
Okay, so we
Okay.
just have to say, I have a battery or generator backup for this. IV pump,
Pump, yeah.
what's the,
Greg, you asked, I mean, you don't.
no, that's.
I have a spot.
But that was, I can change this so that
Yeah, I think it
I
just
can
should
make
be
this
separate.
smaller and put the battery generator under respirator.
But for
Then you
example,
have it again. I have battery or generator backup for this.
Suction.
Okay, so
It's
suction is up above.
indented under section. It's indented under dialysis. It's indented under respirator ventilator, just happened to go to the other page.
You might want to just put it under, I have battery or generator backup for the following. And that way, it
Right.
seems like maybe some of them may be falling under it, and just have a separate category just for those specific items. One thing that seems to, maybe I'm stating the obvious, and forgive me if I am, obviously, any of this information that's going to be disclosed needs to have some form of HIPAA disclosure that the individual is going to sign off on. Otherwise, all this information can't be.
Right,
So I state that up front.
and also people who have like spinal stimulators, someone you have to charge the battery overnight, and then the battery is in the belt that goes on the spinal stimulator and charges it through the skin. That would be something you want to add, something to that medical status.
So we'll work on this and
No, it's just the
So,
wording.
table, there's very great stuff.
Athena will meet again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can see because when people actually go to fill it out, they'll get confused. But I
Except that it's
know-
not going to look like this to
Yeah.
them, it's going to be online.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but we can fix it.
But if the IT person who's putting it in doesn't understand it,
Right.
Yes.
then it's going to be inputted wrong.
Correct.
And I've gone through that a number of times, so.
Okay.
Again, it's just, does the town accepts when, this is what this is going to be, that if someone is on one of these machines, it's going to be alerting the town that I'm on it and I'm on such and such a street?
Yeah.
That's what we're hoping, yes.
Yeah, yes, that's what that's what Chief Murphy, he just wants to know if there's an issue, if he gets called to a home, is the person mobile? And he can pick it up. Not, so he got called to someone's home and they're on a machine. Not that he needs to know all the time. It's just in case of an emergency or if they get evacuated for some reason.
Correct, that's what I'm saying,
Right.
is that, you know, again, as someone in the home, you teach that to those people. Whoever is renting that equipment that's all here, you know, is being taught in your home. They're told right in there that they're signing off, that they should alert the town.
But
Well, we hope.
We hope.
Well, that's why
Right.
the form that the town currently has
This
is
is great.
information.
No, this is great.
The form the town currently has is like a one-page form that doesn't tell you anything.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's why we were asked to,
I think this is wonderful.
And a few years ago, when they were modifying the emergency 911,
Yeah,
we were working on it then.
yeah, yeah.
And the chief said, well, wait till we have the new center up and do it.
I mean, it makes sense, you know.
Okay, since, three things we got to cover. If you have any expenses, you need to get them in now, before the budget goes over. Next thing is, there's going to be a meeting August 17th with the Director of Disabilities, David DiArquette, DiArcangelo, and that's in Hyannis. I would suggest everybody to go because that helps the network better. That's where I met Mr. Higgins, Steve Higgins has spoke, and I'm always networking with all the other commissions, and it's a wealth of knowledge. Let's see, and when is our next meeting, and where it's going to be?
July 12th, currently at the Selectmen's hearing room. The meeting is August 22nd, John.
In Hyannis,
in Hyannis with Commissioner D'Angelo.
not the 17th.
You have to notify by the 17th.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for the correction, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And that's all in your packets.
Yep, okay.
Okay, all I have is a motion to adjourn. Any more business you want to throw in quick? Anything from the audience?
Thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Well,
I'll second.
Okay.
all in favor?
Thank you all.
And more-